So what are sine and cosine, or sine and cos? This was actually a viewer request, so if you're watching, big shout out to you. Thank you for requesting this video. In terms of what sine and cosine are, I feel like this could be answered in a few different ways, so I'm going to do my best to explain to you exactly what they are. So sine and cosine are functions, and you can see in front of you the graph of sine and the graph of cos. Now this is when they're mapped to a graph, and I think this is a really great visual understanding of what they are. So for example, when you put certain values of sine of an angle into your calculator, you're going to get a number. And if you do it on your calculator now and you do sine of 90, you're going to get a value of 1. And if you do, for example, cos of 180 degrees, you're going to get -1. Now these actually match up with these graphs here. So you can see, for example, when we have 90 on the sine graph on the x-axis, the y-axis is going to give us a value of 1. That's because they're functions and we plug certain things in and then we get things out. And this is a representation of 1 all the way up to 360 degrees. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 360 degrees visualized as a graph. So they're just a function. You put something in, you get something out, and then this is then visually represented. Right, so what's the point of these? Well, sine and cos can be used in lots of different ways. Two ways they can be used is the cosine rule and sine rule. These rules are here. So we've got the cosine rule here. The big ABC are angles and the small ABC are sides. So this is the cosine rule, and then I will show you the sine rule. It says sine law, but it's the sine rule. It's the same thing. And sin is the same as sine, so sine, and cos and cosine are the same thing as well. People just write them in those two different forms, but they're the same thing. And using the cosine and sine rule, we can find things such as missing angles, missing sides, and they can be used, in a variety of ways. With the cosine rule and sine rule, you can find side lengths of a triangle, you can find angles of a triangle. For example, here's an example of the cosine rule. So they wanted to find the length A, and because they knew certain things already, for example, the length of B and C and angle A, you're able to find such things as length A. And here's some examples of some sine questions. So you can use the sine rule to find the answer to these questions. And there's loads of examples. There's like SOHCAHTOA. And yeah, they have a lot of different uses, but they're effectively functions. When they're mapped to a certain way, you can see that graph, and that's why you get a certain value back when you put it into your calculator. And yeah, particularly relevant to a lot of people are going to be the cos and sine rule. So I hope that makes sense. I realize there's a few ways to answer that question. If you have any other questions, please just leave them down below and I'll do my best to explain it in the comments or make another video. Thank you to everyone who got this far. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope it helped. Best of luck with everything.